In the previous class, we looked at how we prepare a research proposal. Today, we will look at research reports. So, we say conduct an experiment, and whatever the results we get, those results need to be conveyed to others, maybe funding agency or general public. Sometimes for career advancement and other things, you have to bring out these reports. Simplest form would also be you can see in colleges and universities. Science students do experiments in their labs, they get results and those results are reported. So, that is where importance of research report can be seen. Later on, even at workplace, research reports are very important. So, organizations, NGOs, research institutes, all these they bring out research reports periodically. So, for what purpose and what is the structure of research report, we will look at these details now. So, as you can see, there are mainly two kinds of reports. So, one is called documentation report and the second one is called assessment report. So, what is the difference between these two? So, in a documentation report, as the name itself suggests, your aim is to merely document research and report findings. You report what has been done so far. Usually, this is used to monitor progress, periodical progress, to be more specific. Say you are carrying out a project which has 1 year duration. So, maybe at the end of 3 months, every 3 months you submit a report. So, this is kind of documents what has been done so far and what is the plan for the future. The second kind is called assessment report. So, this is slightly different. So, here what you do is you examine a situation or a problem and then you recommend a specific action. Say for example, you look at human wildlife interface and the problems it is causing, say in India. Now, your report can study the situation and also suggest actions to address these issues. So, that would be second kind of report, what we call assessment report. So, before we go into structure of reports, let us first look at a little more details regarding research studies, because so before you write a report, you actually conduct a research study. So, through that you get results and those things, those results you report in a research report. So, one of the most common kinds of studies is what we call descriptive studies. So, these studies are primarily concerned with finding out what is. So, it involves observing and describing the behavior of a subject without influencing it in any way. It is like, say, students are learning English in a classroom. You go there just as an observer, you sit and observe how the teacher goes about teaching, how the interaction happens and what is the response of learners. So, you just document these things without influencing the subjects. Some examples are here. Do teachers hold favorable attitudes toward using computers in schools? How many people use the AECT Gopher server and what do they use if for, sorry, what do they use it for? So, your question here in the first example is you are looking at whether teachers are okay to using computers in schools. So, that is your research question. In the second one, you are looking at using of this specific server. So, how many people use it and what do they use it for? So, here you are just going to observe things and then document those things. You do not influence people involved in it, the objects involved in it. So, under descriptive studies you can follow couple of techniques, or you can say research methods. One is observational method, or it is also called field observation. So, it means you observe the participants, you observe the subjects of your study. So, this is not a casual observation, you plan it and you have in your mind what to look for. So, when you are observing you focus on those things. So, there are two main categories. One is called naturalistic observation and the second is laboratory observation. So, as the name suggests, there are keen differences between them. One naturalistic method, here as a researcher you view participants in their naturalistic context. So, for example, for students classroom is a naturalistic context. For workers workplace is the naturalistic context. For sellers maybe marketplace is the naturalistic context. So, you go to such naturalistic context and you observe people there. Second is laboratory observation. Here you observe your participants in a laboratory setup. So, how is this different from naturalistic context? So, in laboratory settings you as a researcher have more control over variables, say simple things such as temperature. So, you can control temperature settings in laboratory and observe how people behave when it is extremely cold or when it is extremely hot, something like that. But in naturalistic context you do not have control over these variables. Sometimes there may be what we call a lot of extraneous factors and disturbances. So, for example, you go to say a school to observe how children study in a rural school, but outside there may be a function and a loud music going on, lot of people moving in and around. So, you as a researcher you have no control over those things. In contrast, if it were a laboratory setting, you can control all these factors and so you can remove these extraneous variables to the greatest extent possible. There are some advantages as well. Laboratory settings, they are less time consuming and sometimes they may be cheaper than naturalistic observations. Say for example, how children learn languages. If it is naturalistic context, you may actually have to follow a child's growth over a number of years. But laboratory settings, say you gather children from multiple backgrounds at different age intervals and then you can complete your research in a shorter span of time. So, laboratory settings are less time consuming and they are cheaper as well. So, here usually your purpose is often to investigate the relationship between two variables. So, some questions like, do taller people make more money? So, the variables are here, a person, person's height and the money they make. The second example, see, do magnets help relieve pain? So, magnets is one variable, using magnets, and pain relief is another variable. So, what is the relationship between these two variables? So, that is what you observe. So, these variables you can distinguish between them as explanatory variable and response variable. Explanatory variable is one which causes changes and response variable is one which undergoes actually changes. So, here magnets would be explanatory variable because it causes changes. People undergoing pain relief, that is response variable. So, in an observational study you observe data, you collect it on each subject. Very important, as we have been focusing on this thing, you do not manipulate the variables, you just observe them as they are. When you manipulate, that becomes an experimental study. For example, let us look at this. So, your research question is, does exercise prevent colds? So, you have decided to follow observational method. So, you are going to observe people and then come to a conclusion about it. So, you are going to observe people exercising and then you are going to see if it prevents colds. So, what you do is you randomly select some people and then you record data for each subject on amount of exercise and number of colds in a particular span of time. And later on you compare the data and then you come to a conclusion. So, say you have two groups, one group of people who do exercises and so you have data about say hours they spend on some exercises and then cold episodes in a particular span of year, say in 1 year. So, that is one set of data you have. You have another group of people who do not do any exercises and so now you collect data about the cold episodes regarding this particular group and now you compare. So, if you then find that number of cold episodes per subject is less regarding people who do some sort of exercise, then you say that yes, exercise prevents colds. Otherwise, you say no, exercise does not help prevent cold. Next is called randomized experiment. So, what happens here is you have a group of participants, often volunteers, and then you manipulate one of the variables. So, what we call here is control group and experimental group. So, you here again have two groups. With one group you manipulate, with another group you do not. After a set amount of time you record data and then you compare. So, now you take say for example, two groups of people, all these people are those who are not doing any exercise at this moment. So, now you randomly assign them into two groups. For one group you ask them to spend at least 2 hours every day on some specific exercise. The other group, you just ask them to continue to do what they are doing, that is no exercise. So, people who you have asked to do some exercise every day, they will be your experimental group. Who are going to be just as they were earlier, that would be your control group. Now, say at the end of 6 months, you compare the results and then you come to a conclusion. So, this is called randomized experiment. Here is an example of a small research and what they found. Let us look at this. Social media and anxiety. A study showed that Facebook increases people's anxiety levels by making them feel inadequate and generating excess worry and stress. Social media provides constant updates. This motivates many people to continually check their status and news feed on mobile devices. Some people feel a constant impulse to check for updates, only feeling relief when they turn off the mobile device. In this study, over half of the respondents felt uneasy when they were unable to access their social media and email accounts. Additionally, 2/3 had difficulty sleeping due to anxiety and other negative emotions after they had used the sites. The constant updates also led many respondents to frequently compare themselves to others, leading to feelings of inadequacy. This anxiety and worry creates chronic stress that could lead to health problems, including mental health issues. So, here this is an example of just observation and recording the results. So, no variables were here manipulated. So, what is the study here? What the study aims to address if there is any link between social media and anxiety. So, social media staying on social media and anxiety levels, if there is any connection between the two. So, what did they find? So, they found that Facebook increases people's anxiety levels. How? By making them feel inadequate and generating excess worry and stress. So, how this happens is reported here. So, you can see here. Over half of the respondents, these details are not included in this extract. Probably they interviewed people, they sent a questionnaire to a group of people. So, over half of the respondents felt uneasy when they were unable to access their social media and email accounts. So, this is how it increases anxiety levels. So, this is point number 1. Then additionally 2/3 had difficulty sleeping due to anxiety and other negative emotions after they had used the sites. So, anxiety and other negative emotions, probably because they were unhappy about what others had updated on social media, something like that. Then the constant updates also led many respondents to frequently compare themselves to others, leading to feelings of inadequacy. So, this anxiety and worry creates chronic stress that could lead to health problems, including mental health issues. So, here they just observed people and they have found how social media usage actually affects a person's anxiety levels. Next method is actually called case study method. So, what happens here is you do an in-depth study of an individual or a group of individuals. So, this could be a person, an organization, something like that. So, for example, you have a very young business achiever in front of you. So, this person has become millionaire say at the age of 40. So, you want to find out what made this person so successful in business. So, what strategies this person followed, what is the company selling, what strategies did the company use, how did they overcome competition. So, what has been the progress over past few years. So, all these information you collect and you analyze, and then you come to some conclusion. So, this is based on your research question. So, if your research question is so to find out what made this person so successful in such a short span of time, you focus on strategies used and other things. So, this is clearly called a case study. It could also be about an unsuccessful case. So, you had a big company and then it collapsed. For example, Nokia till some years back was the world leader in manufacturing of cell phones, but later on the company shut down, and later on that brand Microsoft. So, how this drastic change happened? So, what made to this fall? So, you can actually do a study about causes which led to fall of such a big company as well. So, this is what we call case study. So, these case studies often lead to testable hypotheses and allow us to study rare phenomena. So, this is something not which is observed in everyday life, then it is not worth an in-depth study. So, this is something rare, and it can also come up with some principles, some implications for wider public. So, that is the reason for in-depth case study. So, if you say that okay, see, if you do not change yourself according to market trends, no matter how big you are, you will collapse. So, this is your testable hypothesis say. So, you study the case of Nokia company to verify this hypothesis. So, this can apply to many other companies as well. So, here it has a wider implication. So, that is why you look at case study. Next is a survey method. So, here participants answer questions administered through interviews or questionnaires. After participants answer the questions, researchers describe the responses. So, in order for the survey to be both reliable and valid, it is important that the questions are constructed properly. So, questions should be written so they are clear and easy to comprehend. So, this is an important part of survey. So, for example, you want to find out what features are most valued by students in the age range of 20 to 25. So, you want to do a survey, find out which features in a mobile phone are highly valued, highly sought after, and then probably you want to incorporate those features in your brand new mobile phone. So, you conduct a survey. So, you can do it through a questionnaire. You design a questionnaire which has some set of questions, mostly objective multiple choice items with specific focus, and then you send these questionnaires out to target population. Say in this case students in the age range of 20 to 25 across the country, and then you get the responses and then you tabulate those. Say out of 2000 respondents, about 60% have said a good camera is an important thing for a mobile phone. So, then you focus on that specific feature. So, this is how you use. Sometimes you can also interview people personally and gather data. That is actually more time consuming, and if you have a smaller population, then it works best. Okay. Now, coming to the format of reports. So, if you recall, we first started with why we have research reports. So, you conduct a research and you then report its findings. So, that is why we use research reports, and then we looked at some basic research studies designs. So, like observation, randomized experiments, case study methods, survey methods. So, after you have conducted the research study, after you analyze the data and you have now the findings, now you have to report. So, the format, general format of a research report is given here. Sometimes this format varies. Some organizations have their own specific format, but this is a general format we are looking at. So, a report has a title, an abstract, introduction section, methods, research methodology, results, discussion and references. So, here you may recall that this is somewhat similar to the structure of a research proposal. There also you have an introduction section, you talk about methodology, and instead of results and discussions, you have sort of implications, you talk about what you expect. Now, you have conducted the research and so you have the results with you. So, you report the actual results here, not what you expect, that you do in a research proposal. So, looking at these components in detail, the first one is title. So, title should contain the essential elements of the report, and ideally not more than 12 words. If the title is too long, it is too clumsy. Look at an example, the effect of temperature changes on the germination of wheat. So, this clearly tells that this researcher looked at two variables. So, one is temperature change and the second one is germination of wheat. So, this also indicates you that probably the researcher looked at how wheat germinates in different temperature settings. They might have happened in naturalistic contexts or in laboratory manipulated settings. So, somehow this gives you an idea about what could have happened. So, the title here has to be very clear. Second is abstract. So, the function of an abstract is to help potential reader identify whether your report is relevant to his or her research interests. So, abstract is actually like a summary. So, it captures main points of each part of your report. So, going back to it, so you have an introduction section where you introduce the field, you briefly review research, and then you talk about your methodology, then your results and discussion. So, main components of each of these sections you put together in an abstract. So, therefore, it is advised that you write abstract once your complete report is ready. Then you know what sections, what you need to focus on in each of those components, and then you can write the abstract. introduction section. So, just like in a research proposal, this section introduces the subject, gives background information, and then reasons for carrying out the work, and then also reviews major studies in that particular field of study. Next section, methods. So, here it includes details of your research methodology. So, what tools you used, how you collected your data, how you analyzed data, who were your subjects. So, how did you approach them? So, details about data collection procedures, all the details you include under this section. Next, results. So, here you talk about your results. So, you merely report your data here. Say you have administered a survey, and so you have say some findings, some results of it. So, 60% people have liked this, 20% people have not liked this. So, only 5% people have gone for this. A majority of people, say 80%, did not respond to this question. So, you merely here present, you do not offer your comments on those findings. So, that is what you do in discussion. So, here you discuss your main findings, and then you comment on the effectiveness of your research. Also, you talk about any limitations if your study had. Obviously, no study can be perfect. So, you may have missed out on something, or you did not expect one particular variable to play a very important role. So, such limitations are also included under this section. Here you may also give indications for future research. What so there was a gap, your study has filled in a part of it. So, there is still something more to be explored. So, all those details go under this section. Conclusion, you summarize your work. Sometimes this conclusion section is optional. You might include as I mentioned, suggestions for further research and limitations under discussion itself. Then you have references, you list all the works you have consulted. So, these are main components of a research report. Now, we will look at an example to actually understand how a research report is written. So, this is an extract from a survey report. What is it? Let us find out. The title of this report is Communicating about Oceans, Results of a National Survey. This was conducted for the Ocean Project by Belden, Rosanello and Stewart and American Viewpoint. This happened in October 1999. So, what was the aim of this survey, and who were the people who participated in this? Let us look at this. In a national telephone survey for the OCEAN project, Belden, Rosanello and Stewart (BRS), in collaboration with American Viewpoint, explored the public's connections, values, attitudes and knowledge relating to the oceans. Our goal was to better understand what needs to be communicated to build awareness and to increase Americans' concerns about the health of the oceans. So, keyword here is this was done at the country level, national level. Then this was a telephonic survey. This survey explored public's connections, values, attitudes, knowledge relating to the oceans. So, why they wanted to understand what people know and what needs to be communicated to build awareness and increase Americans' concerns about the health of the oceans. So, how many people participated? The national survey for the OCEAN project was conducted among 1,500 adults in the continental United States from July 24th to August 8th, 1999. So, 1,500 adults participated, means it excluded children, and this was the duration. So, from July 24th to August 8th, 1999. So, 1,500 adults, they were telephoned and they were asked questions about what they know about the oceans, and they responded. So, a sample question from this survey is given here. Question 1 to 5. Here are some issues the country will be facing over the next few years. I would like to ask you how big of a priority each issue should be. Let us start with blank. Should it be an extremely high priority, a high, a middle, a low, or an extremely low priority for the country to address? So, you saw here there was a blank. This was filled with these issues: improving public education, improving the healthcare system, lowering crime rates, preserving social security, protecting the environment. So, there are 5 issues. So, thus they become 5 questions. So, for example, question 1 will be something like this: here are some issues the country will be facing over the next few years. I would like to ask you how big of a priority each issue should be. Let us start with improving public education. Should it be an extremely high priority, a high, a middle, a low, or an extremely low priority for the country to address? Similarly, so they asked questions about each of these issues. So, you can clearly see here the question is very clear. They are giving these asking people to use a rating scale. What are the points on this rating scale? Extremely high priority, a high, a middle, a low, or an extremely low. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, 5-point rating scale. Okay. So, here is an extract from the stats section. This is about the question we just looked at. So, how people responded to this question? Let us look at this. Descriptive stats, priorities for the country. Question 1 to question 5. Here are some issues the country will be facing over the next few years. I like to ask you how big of a priority each issue should be. Let us start with blank. So, each of these issues come here. Should it be an extremely high priority, a high, a middle, a low, or an extremely low priority for the country to address? So, this was the question which was asked to people who participated in the survey, and how people responded, it has been tabulated here. So, if you look at this table, improving public education, improving the healthcare system, lowering crime rates, preserving social security, protecting the environment. So, this has been made bold because this was the focus area. 5-point scales: extremely high priority, middle priority, low priority, extremely low priority, and then percentage of people who said so. 46%, 43, 9, 1, 1, 37%, 46, 13, 3, 1, 36%, 45, 16, 3, null, 35%, 48, 14, 2, 1, 32%, 46, 18, 3, 1. So, this is descriptive stats. It is given in a tabular format. Now, that table is explained here. The top priority for Americans is improving education, with nearly half of Americans, 46%, saying it is an extremely high priority. So, go back to this table. So, you see here. So, this is what they are talking about nearly 50% said improving public education is the issue which of extremely high priority. Following closely are improving healthcare 37%, lowering crime rates 36% and preserving social security 35%. Protecting the environment, while considered a top priority by about a third of the public, 32%, takes somewhat of a backseat to these more immediate concerns. So, here the writer looks at this column and so compares how each of these issues have got have been rated as extremely high important, and then points out that protecting the environment is just 32%, in fact, the lowest among these 5. So, this is reporting descriptive stats in a tabular format, and that has been explained here. Now, this is more detailed stats here. So, this gives percentage. So, say 46% of people said improving public education is extremely issue of extreme high priority. Now, this gives the breakup. So, out of people, so how many were male, how many female, then the age ranges here, then race, white, black, Hispanic, geographic regions, northeast, midwest, south, west, then people based on who show some kind of interest in wildlife and others. So, zoo visitors, aquarium visitors, science museum visitors, non-visitors, and then people living near ocean and people living not near the ocean. So, the question is here the same. Here are some issues the country will be facing over the next few years. I would like to ask you how big of a priority each issue should be. Should it be an extremely high priority, a high, a middle, a low, or an extremely low priority for the country to address? So, here they are reporting only about this issue, protecting the environment. So, if you look at this breakup, this is the aggregate thing total. So, out of 1500 people. So, if you recall, I am going back. So, total of 1500 adults participated in this. Out of it, 32% have said it is an extremely important thing. Now, there is breakup. So, out of total male participants, 27% said this is extremely high priority, female 36%. Similarly, age ranges you can see here 18 to 29, 30 to 44, 45 to 59, 60 plus, then white, black, Hispanic. So, you see here, and then geographic regions northeast, midwest, south and west. So, then zoo visitors, aquarium visitors, science museum visitors, non-visitors. So, here probably you can see that these numbers are relatively high when compared to this number. So, these things will be your next step, you interpret these stats. Now, this particular table is explained here. Protecting the environment is a higher priority for women, younger Americans less than 45, blacks, residents of the northeast and midwest, and those who have visited a zoo, aquarium or science museum in the last year than their counterparts in society. So, a very neat way of summing up the findings. 4 in 10, about 38% Americans have visited a zoo in the last year, and 3 in 10 have visited an aquarium 30% or science museum 28%. Visitors to zoos, aquariums and science museums are more likely than the population as a whole to be younger, less than 45, to have children, to have high household incomes, high levels of education, and to work in white collar or professional jobs. So, more details about this particular population. So, first you report it in a table and then you explain it. So, that is how you conduct a survey and you report it. Now, we will look at a complete research report. This is taken from RMIT University. So, let us look at this. So, let us first look at the subsections here. So, this is executive summary, or you can also call it a summary or an abstract. Then you have introduction section, then methods here, then results. So, under results some tables you find, then discussion, also known as interpretation of results. Then you have conclusion, then recommendation. This is a specific section, probably this is something to do with research. We will look at it in detail. So, now let us read this in detail. Executive summary. The aim of this report was to investigate Unilab staff attitudes to personal mobile phone use in staff and team meetings. A staff survey on attitudes towards the use of mobile phones in the staff team meetings was conducted. The results indicate that the majority of staff find mobile phone use a major issue in staff meetings. The report concludes that personal mobile phones are disruptive and should be turned off in meetings. It is recommended that Unilab develops a company policy banning the use of mobile phones except in exceptional circumstances. So, this is about a particular company Unilab and the staff of its company, the attitudes of the people there towards mobile phone use in staff and team meetings. So, they just wanted to the researchers wanted to observe whether people use mobile phones in meetings and how others feel about it. So, this is the aim. Okay. So, what they did, the researchers conducted a survey. So, this is how they got the data, and the results are here, that they find it as a major issue. So, why is it a major issue? They are disruptive, and there is a strong recommendation here that the company develop a policy banning the use of this. So, we saw that there are sections like introduction, methodology, results, discussion, recommendation. So, your executive summary or abstract represents each of those sections. Okay. Now, we move to introduction. There has been a massive increase in the use of personal mobile phones over the past 5 years, and there is every indication that this will continue. According to Black 2002, by 2008 almost 100% of working people in Australia will carry personal mobile phones. Black describes this phenomena as serious in the extreme, potentially undermining the foundations of communication in our society. 2002, page 167. So, citation styles. Currently, at Unilab, 89% of staff have personal mobile phones. So, here you can see the writer introduces the topic. The topic here is the use of personal mobile phones in specifically in Australia. Writer also refers to a study Black 2002 which predicts that by 2008 almost 100% of people will have this. and this is going to be a very serious phenomenon. So, this introduces the topic, it also straight away comes to the issue. Then it comes to this organization Unilab, which is now the focus. Recently, a number of staff have complained about the use of personal mobile phones in meetings and asked what the official company policy is. At present, there is no official company policy regarding phone use. This report examines the issue of mobile phone usage in staff meetings and small team meetings. It does not seek to examine the use of mobile phones in the workplace at other times, although some concerns were raised. So, this clearly comes to the problem there, which has been explored. So, a number of staff complained about the use of personal phones and they asked if there is any official policy. So, as a result, a team probably was constituted and the research team now has examined the issue of mobile phone use in, so the context is again here very specific, in staff meetings and small team meetings. So, this does not include the use of mobile phones in the workplace at other times. This is only during meetings. For the purposes of this report, a personal mobile phone is a personally funded phone for private calls as opposed to an employer funded phone that directly relates to carrying out a particular job. Since this is about the use of personal mobile phones in meetings, the writers very clearly here distinguish between a personal mobile phone and an employer funded phone. So, something which is related to a job, that is not studied here. So, if you recall, in the beginning we listed two kinds of reports, assessment report and the report which only documents, the documentation report. So, this is an example of an assessment report. There has been a problem. So, a study has been conducted examining that particular issue in detail and it has come up with some solutions to address that particular problem. So, this is a clear example of an assessment report. Okay. The next section, methods. This research was conducted by questionnaire and investigated Unilab staff members' attitudes to the use of mobile phones in staff team meetings. A total of 412 questionnaires were distributed with employees' fortnight pay slips, see Appendix 1. The questionnaire used Likert scales to assess social attitudes, see Smith 2002, to mobile phone usage and provided open-ended responses for additional comments. Survey collection boxes were located in every branch for a 4-week period. No personal information was collected. The survey was voluntary and anonymous. So, this is about the research methodology. So, how they went about it? So, we saw earlier that this was a survey. So, now we have details about it. So, the researchers designed a questionnaire and how many number is here 412. These were given to probably all employees, but the survey was voluntary and anonymous. So, the people were not forced to participate in it. Whoever filled it and dropped in survey collection boxes, they were only those responses were analyzed. And anonymous, people who participated, they were not required to give personal details like name and other details which help identify that person. So, what did the questionnaire include? The questionnaire used Likert scales to assess social attitudes to mobile phone usage. So, this has been used in a previous study. So, this is your justification to use this particular tool. Also, there was some space for open ended responses. Next section, results. There was an 85% response rate to the questionnaire. It means out of 412 distributed, about 85% of those people responded. A breakdown of the responses is listed below in table 1. It can be clearly seen from the results that mobile phones are considered to be disruptive and should be turned off in meetings. So, this is kind of summarizes the results. The stats are given here in table 1. Personal mobile phone usage in staff and team meetings is not a problem, an issue, disruptive, phone should be permissible, phone should be turned off, allowed in some circumstances. So, these were the question things, and people were asked to respond along these 4 scales: strongly agree, agree, disagree, strongly disagree. So, not a problem, 5% said strongly agree, 7% agree, 65% disagreed, strongly disagreed 23%. So, that is other points were also you can see the responses. The survey also allowed participants to identify any circumstances where mobile phones should be allowed in meetings, and also assessed staff attitudes towards receiving personal phone calls in staff meetings in open ended questions. These results showed that staff thought that in some circumstances, for example, medical or emergencies, receiving personal phone calls was acceptable, but generally receiving personal phone calls was not necessary. So, you can see here allowed in some circumstances. So, people have said, and some examples included medical or other emergencies. Here also you can see that 80% of people strongly agreed that mobile phone usage in meetings is disruptive. Now, discussion. It can be seen from the results in table 1 that personal mobile phone use is considered to be a problem. However, it was acknowledged that in some situations it should be permissible. 80% of the recipients considered mobile phones to be highly disruptive, and there was strong support for phones being turned off in meetings, 85%. Only 12% thought that mobile phone usage in staff and team meetings was not a problem, whereas 85% felt it was an issue. The results are consistent throughout the survey. Many of the respondents, 62%, felt that in exceptional circumstances, mobile phones should be allowed. For example, medical, but there should be protocols regarding this. These findings are consistent with other studies. According to Smith 2005, many companies have identified mobile phones as disruptive and have banned the use of mobile phones in meetings. Harvey 2004 claims that 29% of staff meeting time is wasted through unnecessary mobile phone interruptions. This affects time management, productivity and team focus. So, referring to some other studies, the researchers here clearly say that mobile phone usage is disruptive. Conclusion: the use of mobile phones in staff meetings is clearly disruptive and they should be switched off. Most staff felt it is not necessary to receive personal phone calls in staff meetings except under certain circumstances, but permission should first be sought from the team leader, manager or chair. Because this was constituted to address a specific issue, there is a recommendation section. It is recommended that Unilab develops an official policy regarding the use of mobile phones in staff meetings. The policy should recommend mobile phones are banned. Mobile phones may be used in exceptional circumstances, but only with the permission of the appropriate manager or chair. Finally, the policy needs to apply to all staff in the company. So, the report ends with strong recommendation. So, summing up, today we have looked at a research report. We also looked at two samples, one a survey report about people's attitude towards oceans. The second one was a kind of an assessment report. It investigated an issue and presented solutions to address that particular issue. Thank you.